Now that I've got the finish color on the airplane and the fuselage, there's a couple more things I need to do to it. One of them is to put the numbers on it. Since airplane is more than 30 years old, I could put 2-inch numbers on it instead of the 12-inch numbers. But I fly the airplane commercially, and to fly it commercially, technically you're supposed to have 12-inch numbers on it. The other thing is, I don't know whether I'll ever fly this again down through Canada or not, but we're right here on the border. There's also the ADIZ zones out here, Air Defense Identification Zones. Come close to them when you go up north if you go up along the coast, but you go through it going south if you go on the coast going south, and those require 12-inch numbers to go through there. Although most of the people I know that have the 3-inch numbers or 2-inch numbers fly just fine for commercial and through the ADIZ zones and stuff like that with just those numbers on without ever putting the big numbers on, the 12-inch numbers on. But I don't think the black on here with the numbers detracts any from this paint job. We've got all of this yellow on here, and the black actually stands out against it and kind of enhances it as far as I'm concerned. So I've laid these numbers out on here. Now there's some standards you have to meet. The numbers have to be 2/3 as wide as they are tall. Now, I don't know why they don't just say 8 inches wide if they're 12 inches tall. Now that's except for W and M, which both are as wide as they are tall. Most of the numbers and letters have to be 2/3 of the height, except for the 1, which is 1/6 of the height, which is 2 inches. And then the space between the numbers has to be 1/6 of the height, which is another 2 inches. And the width of the letters have to be 1/6 of the height. So I've got it all laid out here now, and I just did it with the ruler. I got a little bit of slant on the numbers, which makes them line up kind of parallel more with the flight line of the airplane. And then I've got to put the lightning stripe on there too, but I'll have to go get my boot cowl and my side panels and put on in the door and the baggage compartment door, the big baggage compartment door, and put those in on the other side, because the lightning stripe goes up just back about 3 or 4 inches back from the firewall. I got the numbers laid out here on the left side and taped in. I had to mask them off still. Got the initial line for the stripe kind of semi laid out there. I don't have it taped yet. What I did was I'd measured it where it started from on the old airframe, and I marked it off on this one, and then went up to the front where it goes and marked it off on there. And then I took a piece of that string and taped onto the back there where it goes back there, where the initial point of the stripe goes right there, and then run that string up forward to where the top of the stripe goes up forward. That piece of string is a piece of that waxed thread that was left over. Actually, it was a piece that I took off the roll there that got dirty or something. That's the rib stitching thread. Kind of a disappointment here. I had those numbers laid out on this left side, and I thought they looked pretty good. I went over on the right side to start laying the numbers out there. I realized that I needed that upper baggage compartment door because the numbers run up into it. So I went and got the upper rear baggage compartment door and the forward baggage compartment door and brought them down here and put them on. And the paint on those doesn't match this paint that I've put on the airframe here. That was kind of a disappointment. That paint was some older stuff that I had, and it's still PPG, but it's a different DHU something or something like that. I don't know, DUHS or whatever. It's supposed to match. The color codes are the same as this paint that I got here, but it's pretty far off. It's several shades darker. Well, I got to looking on that right side over there, and I noticed that the rear portion of the fuselage and the tail was kind of dry looking, and I thought at first that it was just overspray from spraying the top of the rest of the fuselage and stuff. But once I got to looking, I realized that it was not right. It was on there dry. Well, I thought about just taping that off on the top, just repainting that right side with those baggage compartment doors on there mounted up and everything, go over everything with another coat of paint. Decided I would, rather than take a chance on screwing things up by compounding errors by just doing one side and not the other, I just decided I was going to go over the whole thing with another coat of paint. So I went over everything with the 400 grit sandpaper, water dry paper, washed it now, wiped it off with a damp cloth to get all the dust off of it. Now I'm going to go get some towels and come down and wipe it down some more to help it dry out a little fast, and wash it down with some Prep-Sol, put another coat of paint on it. But meanwhile I've got to decide whether I'm going to put those boot cowls and side panels on there and coat those too. Well, I totally screwed that up. I had way too much paint flow, or I was holding it too close or going too slow, or a combination of all of the above. But this left side, it ran like a scalded dog. The whole side of it there is a big run along it. I don't know, it looks like hell. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that now. Try to clean that up, I guess. Wait till it cures good and hard and then sand it down or something. I don't know. It's a mess on this left side. Like I said, the right side turned out good. The top turned out really nice. Both of them look really nice. The colors on those doors, on the baggage compartment doors, they blended in real nice, so that all looks a whole lot better than it did. This side looks like crap. Should have left this side alone, but then I'd have done the same thing on the other side, I guess. Ordinarily when I'm painting, I can tell pretty quick when I've got too much paint flow or too close or something, and see if stop it before I get a little bit of sag. But that doggone hood, you just lose too much visibility out of it. You can't really see what's going on, and holding myself at an angle to try to see the paint flowing on there on the reflection and stuff. Anyway, I screwed this side up. Well, I really screwed up the paint job on this left side here. I'm going to blame it on my respirator mask. Not that I can't screw up a paint job, but I can usually catch it pretty quick. But that respirator mask, or that mask of that rebreather, whatever you want to call it, that thing is, the visibility out of it is just so bad that I just didn't catch it until I was all the way down this fuselage, or 2/3 the way down it. I got it fixed down there towards the forward portion, but this whole center section here, primarily between the upper longeron and this middle stringer, it just run all the way down it. There's not a whole lot you can do about it on here on this fabric airplane. If it was on a car on a hard surface, you could sand it down, strip it, all kinds of things to get it down. And they actually make a little deal called a nib or something that has a little standoffs on the side of it with a sharp blades in the middle, so that you can rub off those beads off of those runs. On the airplane, the fabric is just too flexible. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. It's too ugly. It's too bad. I don't know whether you can see those runs down there or not farther down, but it's just too bad to leave it the way it is. Well, I came in the day after I painted it, took a razor blade and went up through some of those runs and cut them off. But I was kind of worried about doing that with that paint real soft, afraid to nick into the paint. So I let this set for a couple days now, and I came back in this morning and tried that again, and that stuff's just too hard. The razor blade just skips right over the runs. It won't bite into them at all. So I've got it set up right now. I want to sand those down, see what I can do about getting them flattened out. I'm using some 220 grit wet or dry paper now, and I've just got it on a little block that I cut out. I just cut a small enough piece of paper to wrap around that block, and I've got a bucket full of soapy water, just dishwater, dish soap, and I'm going to have to paint over this. I can already see the white through here in places where I've already sanded, so I'm not going to. I thought maybe I could just sand this down, get these lumps down. I was hoping maybe I could just sand these lumps down, get them down, smoothed out, and then take a buffer and some buffing compound and rub that out, polish it up. Well, these places here, this is that stringer here, and that's a real bad spot because that's hard, and then it's soft underneath it, so there's too many different textures there to sand. But that's what I'm going to have to do, I guess, just carefully sand that all down and get it smoothed out. So I'm pretty much committed to go ahead and paint it over again. I was taking it really careful and just trying to take the high spots off here and try to keep from getting into that undercoat, but since I've already got thin spots here and realize I'm going to have to paint it over, I'll just go ahead and sand it down. I'm not going to sand into the polytone underneath it. Well, I got that sanded down pretty good. I think it's going to look a lot better now. Any hopes that I had of just sanding that down with finer and finer grit sandpaper and then buffing it out kind of disappeared with the appearance of white through the paint there in several spots. I didn't get down into the polytone, into the underlying cover, but it's showing through in several spots. Even though that's had a couple of days to cure, and I took a lot of material off of some of those drips and runs. Oh, they might still be a little bit soft there now that I've got them exposed. So I'm going to go ahead and let that sit overnight, and then I'm going to go over this side here with 400 grit sandpaper, and then shoot a second coat on it, or another coat on it. I guess that'd be the third coat. I got the left side of the fuselage all sanded down. Got the runs pretty much sanded out of it. It all looks and feels a lot better than it did. I masked off everything that it's not going to be painted. Now, that coat went on pretty good, but it still looks like crap. You can still see all those runs and stuff in there. Well, that's just the way it's going to be. Not much you can really do about it. That fabric is so flexible that when you sand on it, you just push the lumps and stuff down into it and sand the surrounding area as much as you do the bumps, the runs and stuff. So I got them down so they don't protrude like they did, but they're still pretty obvious there if you look down it. Look good from 50 feet. I run some 400 grit paper over all my panels, my boot cowl and my panel, side panels, and squirted some paint on those so that they would match up with this paint job that's on the airplane with this color, because that color that I'd painted them just didn't quite match. And it probably would have been okay up there on the forward end where it all went together. The doors didn't match, and that would look like hell with the doors not quite matching the rest of the paint. I probably could have got away with the boot cowl not quite matching since it was all one piece up there, but since I had to paint anyway, I went ahead and sanded those down and squirted some of the right color on them. Well, now we can let this stuff set up, and then I'll start getting ready to put the numbers on. I'll let this set for a while before I do anything.